Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. I think we're all still getting connected here. We'll start the meeting in just a minute. If I can ask the board members to be on screen or on camera, rather. All right. And Gregory, tell me when you're ready for us to get started.
Good to go, Matt. Thanks.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the August 12th meeting of the board of the Valley of the Sun Waldorf Education Association and the school we operate, which of course is the Desert Marigold School. Hope everybody is healthy and doing well. I'm excited for a lot of reasons, but one of them is because of the huge amount of work by many people. DMS opens on Monday. Now, of course, as we all know, we're opening for remote instruction, and I know it has not been an easy path to get here. And I think we would all rather that things were a little different than COVID were not here, but it is. And so a huge thank you to Christy and to the faculty and the staff and the administration, because they have done an incredible amount of work to get us here. Really hats off to them. It's been amazing to see. So knock wood, things are in good shape for us to get started on Monday. There's still a lot to do between now and then, of course, but lining up very nicely, and I'm excited for school to begin on Monday. Yay. I'll continue to ask for patience from our community, despite the huge amount of work and effort that has been done. All the planning, all the communicating. Hey, it's possible that there could be a couple of hiccups when things get started next week. So let's all just be patient. And of course, everything will work out fine, but it may call for a little bit of patience. And in addition to that, let's continue to remain flexible. So we've talked about this several times at our prior board meetings, and so it's really more for our community members to remain patient, remain flexible. Things are going to change over the weeks and months ahead. What exactly is going to change, we don't know, but something will. So let's all be as flexible as we can. New information continues to come out from the state, from other sources with respect to COVID and other things, and it's a fluid situation. And indeed, after the State Department of Health just last week issued its revised guidelines, there were a couple of big school districts in DMS's neighborhood, if you will, that changed their plans. They had been planning to open both in-person and remote, and they announced that they were moving to remote only. And that's the Kyrene School District and the Tempe Union High School District. I mentioned those two simply because we had talked about them at our prior board meeting. And at the time, they were going to be offering both, and they've since switched to be remote only, again, underscoring that things are pretty fluid. In the face of that, though, please, as I've mentioned before, please consider DMS itself to be the best source of information about the school, about distance learning and remote learning and what exactly that's going to look like. That could be emails from the administration or faculty. It could be information that's on Parent Square. It could be these meetings. There were town halls recently. So there's been quite a bit of communicating from the school itself. So please consider that to be the best source of information. We, the board, are continuing to meet virtually because of COVID and the health and safety concerns associated with large gatherings of in-person a meeting in person. And so we remain virtual, and we are meeting, and the public is able to attend via Zoom tonight. Gregory, all good?
All good here.
Okay.
Thank you. Just getting things on my end.
Okay, good. All right, so let me, I'll read the opening verse and then I'll ask everyone to introduce themselves. So the opening verse is, the true aim of education is to awaken real powers of perception and judgment in relation to life and living. For only such an awakening can lead to true freedom. And that's from Rudolf Steiner. My name is Matt Walker. I am the DMS board president, and I am a parent of a student at the school. Mr. Tanner, would you mind introducing yourself? I didn't quite catch that. I could read your lips, but I couldn't hear you.
There we go. John Tanner, board member. Thank you, Matt.
Yep, thank you. Gregory?
Gregory Schneider, board secretary and parent of 2 kids at the school.
Nathaniel?
Nathaniel Allen, board member and parent of 2 kids at the school.
April?
April Sauer, board member, and I have a daughter at the school.
And John Elling.
And John Elling, and I'm the board treasurer. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's briefly review the agenda and then touch on a few other meeting logistics, and then we are off and running. So we'll start off with some general items as usual, and we'll get into budget and finance matters, including a general financial update, discussion and possible action on some capital expenditures and campus and facilities improvements, update and discussion of our overall fundraising efforts, and an update on discussions with RSF Social Finance with respect to the school's loan. Then we'll have a parent council update. Then we'll discuss several matters related to COVID-19 and the school's plan to reopen virtually, and a few things that we need to consider and approve in connection with that. And then lastly, an update on the executive director search process. So that'll be our agenda tonight. To log your attendance for our attendees, please click on the link in the agenda notice where indicated. That'll open up an attendance sheet in Google Docs. As you may know, you're not required to log your attendance, but you certainly can. And that's the way to do so. Another reminder, due to Arizona's open meeting law, we are restricted in what we can discuss tonight as a board to the things that are listed and mentioned on our agenda. All right. So why don't we get started? First is the approval of the minutes from our prior meeting. And so I will move for the approval of our minutes from the July 29 meeting of the board.
I'll second.
Thank you, April. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. And abstaining? All right, very good, thank you. Did we want to touch on the board calendar? April, are there a couple things we need to discuss there?
Yes. As I said in the last meeting, I'll be rescheduling with Liz Bevan since we don't have a solid plan. So she wants to know what that plan is so that she can specify her presentation for us. So I'll be making those arrangements with her once we have a better idea of what that is. And at our last meeting, I told you to save the date for September the 2nd. That is no longer going to be the date. Abby Ross is in the thick of it, just as we are. And everything is just changing at such a rapid pace. So she asked to push it back, and no problem. So I will work that out with her.
Okay.
That's it. Those are all the updates.
Okay. So we don't have any particular board education lined up then? No? Okay. All right. Well, April, if that changes, we'll be back together in 2 weeks. We can certainly talk about it there. Okay. Anything else related to the board's calendar or any upcoming dates or deadlines? No? Okay. All right. Well, then let's get into the budget and finance items. And let me welcome and invite Christy Kriegsfeld and Priscilla Garza into the meeting and into our discussion. We have a handful of topics to discuss here. And I think it does make sense to start off with the general discussion and review of our financial statements and the like. Gregory, do you need a minute to try and call up a document or two?
I should have them ready. I just need to know which ones we want to talk about.
Okay.
And in which order.
Well, let me turn it over to John Elling then, and John's going to lead us through this portion.
Okay, well, I'm glad Priscilla's here as well to help with that. But why don't we start with the balance sheet, Gregory? That is probably the smaller one. Then we can move to the profit and loss after that.
Got it. Pulling it up now. All right, is that coming through?
Yes, it did. Okay. And so these came out a little bit earlier. I don't know if anyone had a chance to really preview them before the meeting. But what we'll do is Priscilla and I will take questions from you if you have any on there, if you see any items that you might want clarified.
John, I may have one or two general questions.
Yeah.
So I think it's on this one. Maybe it's on page 2, so we'll get to that in a second. These are our July 31 financials. Priscilla, were we able to close out the June 30 fiscal year books?
I am in the process of closing it out. I still have audit prep to do, but more or less, yes. There weren't too many changes from the previous set of financials that went out. But once I finish my audit prep, then I'll provide an updated. Tomorrow is my Marigold Day. And so I'm going to try to get my charter intervention financials done since they're due next week. And so I'll have something more substantial.
Okay.
Just going through all the audit prep, I want to make sure I go through everything carefully.
Agreed. And then, so speaking of the audit, then when would the our next annual audit kick off?
I don't know Brett's dates. We've already started doing a lot virtually. He had a Dropbox, and I've already loaded some stuff for the Dropbox. He has not set a date. Let me look at my calendar. I don't think he set a date to go out to Marigold yet.
Okay.
So most of his audit dates are in October. So I'll get with Brett and see when he's planning to go to Marigold, or see if he's just going to do it virtually.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Priscilla, at the top of that, I noticed that we have, savings bank and account 5472. Is that the savings account that we keep all of our designated funds in?
That is, yes, that's the restricted funds. Yes.
Yes. Okay. I didn't use the right word. But yeah, those are the restricted. Okay. And then the accounts receivable of 243,776.90. Are those? Do we expect to have any of those written off that we had talked about on some statements from the last meeting?
The 243, what that is because the first payment for the fiscal year comes August 1st, but we reflect the income in July. So 229,652 of that is the equalization payment that was received August 3rd.
Okay.
14,584 is an estimate of the 301 money that will be received, once we get it. There hasn't been anything published yet for what the exact 301 dollar amount is, so I estimated it from last year's.
Okay, thank you.
So remember, going forward, the accounts receivable now is all current. The only thing you'll see in the accounts receivable will be the equalization. No more tuition payments will be in that line.
Great. Okay. That'll help make it clearer for us. If there's no other questions on page 1, we can go ahead and move to page 2, Gregory.
So one of the questions I have here is this still it does correctly list the PPP loan amount, and it is, I think that's still appropriate because we haven't taken steps to try and convert that yet. And that's my general question is timing and next steps around that. Do you happen to know, John?
I can give you a little update on that. So I did get an email from MidFirst, either late yesterday or today. And they had originally expected August 13th to be their rollout for their form to fill in. And they don't have it ready because they're still waiting for more clarification from the government. And so right now, it's just not available.
Okay.
But I do know, and I've had discussions with Priscilla, and her and Aspire have been really looking into all that. She might have something to add about their progress on where they're at with being able to assist us and other schools they do with submitting for the forgiveness.
In regards to the forgiveness, it depends on who the auditor is. There's different guidance out there, and there's a conservative way of booking it, which is the way we have it right now as a loan. and recognizing the income in the loan is actually forgiven. That's the conservative way that some auditors are doing it. The other way is once we have met the criteria for the forgiveness to do the calculations, then we can go ahead and book the income based on once we've met that criteria. So in speaking with Brett, our auditor, he is leaning more towards booking the money when the criteria is met. We just need to run the figures, make sure that we have all the FTEs in place and do the comparative data. And once that's done, then we'll make a determination as we finish the financials for the audit, what portion we're going to book, if any.
Thank you.
And in regards to the application, a lot of the banks don't have the applications out yet. Some of them are expecting changes in the rules again to make it a little bit easier to push the forgiveness. So I think some of them are kind of waiting. I know I talked to 2 different auditors and they had recommended that we wait applying for the forgiveness because they're expecting the application process for it to be more streamlined.
And you know, that's kind of what MidFirst had it in there. They had said the wait is going to benefit the borrower.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's good news. Any other questions, Matt, or anybody else? If not, we can go ahead and move over to our profit and loss.
Can I just make a side note on this? On the line 250 unearned revenue, that is tuition that has already been prepaid, either collected through the Stripe program, through Schoolmaster, or prepaid from earlier. So I am finding that some of the parents are wanting refunds. So you'll see some tuition refunded from that dollar amount, which is why it's in unearned revenue, because the students aren't in class yet. So,
okay, that makes sense.
And John, you said you wanted to look at the profit and loss next?
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. You know, I'll go ahead. I was wondering, Priscilla, how much you can tell us about the state equalization payment. I see that on this particular profit and loss, we have 244,000 plus. Is that figure expected to stay the same, or do we see something happening with that?
unmute. I'm not 100% sure right now. It's an estimated, I'm expecting it to change. I just don't know if it's going to go up or down as the state pulls the attendance data. Then that dollar amount will fluctuate monthly. So it just depends. It's off of an estimated dollar amount, and I don't know that I pulled the report to tell you how many it's estimated off of.
Okay, but we should be at least in the neighborhood of that same number.
if the attendance data is close to what they estimated.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
On that front, maybe now is a good time to ask Christy about the enrollment. Are we still about the same level that we were previously, and or have things changed since the last time we talked?
They haven't changed much. So I think last month we were at around 304, and we have only had a few fluctuate. So that's stayed in the neighborhood. But to Priscilla's point, as we go into remote learning, the state is requiring us to take attendance. And the 40th day is still important this year, as it would be if we were in person. So on that date, which, because we're starting on August 17th, will now be October 12th, we can expect a fluctuation there in terms of our monthly equalization payments going forward. So attendance is always important, but it's super important on that date and as well as the 100th day.
And I pulled up the report. The estimated count that was used for that payment was 300.
Okay.
So it looks like it was a good month. Revenue far exceeding expenses here. Is that just the timing of payments and timing of expenses issue?
I would say yes, because the July 7th payroll was for the prior year, so it's pushed back. And then half of the July 22nd payroll, because we doubled up, that was also pushed back. So the July calculation, what you're seeing is half a month of payroll.
Yeah. Okay.
So it should probably be around another $70,000. That'll equal that out. Another half a month of payroll.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So one of the key questions as we're looking at the balance sheet a minute ago and now the P&L is I don't think we have any other financial statements specific to the school itself. We have a couple of others, but they're, unless I missed something, they're for parent council and student council. So for the school itself, one of the key questions is there a little bit of cash to fund some of the facilities improvements? Now, I know we'll get to that in a minute, exactly what those items are, but while we're looking at these, is there any money here to pay for those repairs that are needed? It's hard to tell. So Priscilla, perhaps it's a question for you. Do you have a sense of, cash on hand, so to speak?
I do not have the cash flow report handy. I know you guys were looking at the cash flow report for the RSF loan. And
yes,
changes based on the if we renew the loan for 20 years or, based on the terms of the renewal of the loan.
Yeah, and the recent cash flow information that was provided, I think, to the officers, or if not, just Mr. Elling as treasurer, that's the most recent cash flow we have, but it is not reflective incorporating these financial statements.
Yeah, I am still coming to grips with that cash flow report and the different things that are on there. But and we can talk more about that later, I guess, when we get into the RSF. Matt, going back to your, first question, the bank accounts, if you see on the balance sheet, in the bank right now is 212,221. And I know Priscilla had mentioned another half a month's payroll will be coming out of that, approximately 70,000. But that should give you an idea of the cash that we have right now. Priscilla, would that be a fair statement?
Well, part of what's in the bank accounts right now is restricted funds. So 60 of that is
I'm sorry. Yes,
yep.
That's right. So we would have about 150, and then less 70. Yeah.
And I also just wanted to mention that the $50,000 grant for COVID-related expenses has not been received, but we have spent money on preparing for, COVID-related expenses, including PPE and on-site services and other items. And so I don't know, since this is July, I don't know that it's reflected in there, but it is the $50,000 is not yet. But that will be also restricted and go to, again, COVID-related matters.
Great, thank you.
Matt, if you're looking for like a sense of a dollar figure, I wonder if it's best to actually look at the potential expenses, just because, I think a few $5,000 items probably can be absorbed, but maybe not $30,000 based on the numbers.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Yeah. So we'll. Well, are there any other questions then on the financial statements themselves before we dive into the specific facilities needs?
I have a quick question for Christy. She was talking about the 40th day. You said October 12th. Is that right, Christy?
Yes, based on an August 17th start date.
Okay, because our calendar says we're off that day because it's Columbus Day.
And it would be August 13th.
Okay.
Thank you.
October 13th, you mean?
Oh, excuse me, October. Yes. October 13th. It's all a blur. Thank you. But yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else then on the financial statements themselves? All right. Not hearing anything. Although, John Elling, are we good to move on? Or did you have something?
No, okay. Sir. Okay. We're ready to move on if the board has their questions answered.
So the next topic then is around the potential facilities needs, facilities improvements, and things of that sort. And for this, let me invite Steve Paolo into the meeting. So Steve, welcome. Nice to see you again. Hope you're well.
You too. Good to see you all again.
All right. So we know that there are important issues here We discussed several of these items at our July 15th meeting, the board did, and we went through a number of them. We got, I think, a good sense from Mr. Tanner and others of what the school's highest priorities were. And we've set in motion at least one of them, and that was the septic work. And I understand from Christy's report that the septic work is finished. Is that right?
That's correct. So the septic, to be specific, it was a part of the system. It's a lift station, and that was fixed last Tuesday. So that's completely repaired. That's done, and the system is working just as it should.
Good.
As if we were to accommodate hundreds of kids, but we're not. But it's working at 100% capacity, which is great.
Great. All right. Thank you for that. One of the other top needs then we talked about was the air conditioning units. The board had a pretty good, vibrant discussion about that. And we were wondering if there's a way to sequence them a little bit to extend the life of the units, but then also spread the costs, because we can't either can't or don't want to try and pay for all of it, to replace all of the units all at once. And so I believe we had asked Mr. Tanner to connect with you and sort of come back with a plan. So have you guys had a chance to talk about that? And if so, what's the latest?
Yeah, we did. And so just to catch everybody up here on where we're at now, every year I go through like a systematic kind of update of the units. We have about 30 air conditioning units at school. And back in June, we did kind of like a health check on everything, just to see where everything's at. And in that scope, there's always going to be a handful of things that need some good attention. So we put that on the docket, and everything has been repaired. There's one extra thing that came up that's going to be repaired tomorrow. That was a last-minute issue. But as of the school start on Monday, everybody should be pleasantly cool in their classrooms, which is good. So that's that. But to go back to your other question, some of those systems, yes, are rather old, and I've done quite a bit of rehab work on those units and basically rebuilt them several times. But I think it is time, Matt, to maybe systematically replace some of them in some fashion over the years, right? So, for example, I met with a gentleman at our current AC company, Wolf Mechanical, and I think from his perspective and mine, the best thing to do would be to do maybe buildings in a segment. So, for example, let's take the grades 1, 2. It's a rather old building, outfitted with, at this point, about 18-year-old air conditioning units. And they're consistently being backed up with issues. So I think it would be feasible for us to do maybe one building at a time. The cost associated with that, there's 3 units, 3 compressors, 3 air handlers. And maybe we'll make some updates, some more modern updates, if you will. The cost on something like that is roughly between, I would say, from his estimate, is about 17 to 18,000, if you will, which isn't bad when you break it down per unit for everything being new. So I think that's the way I would play this, Matt, to tell you the truth. Like I said, starting with those older classrooms first, we have grades 1, 2. And I think the following year would be best to do maybe, let's say, grades. Well, I think this year it's going to be, I don't know what it is, 5, 6, 7 maybe. And maybe do that the following year, because that building is also, I think, going back to 2004, and those units are actually that old as well. And then after that, kind of deciding where we want to go. The administration building's a little bit newer, so we have some time. So the farmhouse unit was replaced last summer, so we have some time. Some of the grades 3 and 4 and grade 8 are all relatively new within a span of about 5 years. So that puts us out there that maybe at the high school trying to do some of those roof-mounted condensers in the following few years from that. So that gives you kind of a cost associated with some of that stuff, Matt. And it's definitely, I think, best to kind of trickle that over time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly very understandable, right? Start with the oldest buildings, the oldest units.
Right.
I presume those are the units that are costing us the most to repair and maintain. So there's, a little bit of cost savings associated with replacing them. So you minimize your maintenance costs for hopefully at least a few years.
Right, that's true. The good part is, I think, going into the school year with a lot less people, I think we'll be able to kind of get through the year with a lot less maintenance costs, if you will. Because usually with the return of the students at this time of the year, there's a heat load that sometimes is so unpredictable in those classrooms that I think last year caused us to spend quite a bit of money at this time of year for kind of spur of the moment repairs. I think in terms of where we are now, I think we might be in a better position. Yeah.
And would you agree, Steve, that the AC units is sort of the biggest facilities need facing the school?
I think so, because I think it's a big money expenditure, especially when we get into maintenance costs. And I think it's time for some of those, especially for an update efficiency-wise. I think we could stand to gain some money back in our pocket that way too. So I would definitely agree. But the septic was a big issue. Buildings and maintenance, the other things, that's down the road. But for now, where we are at a holding point, things, it's probably the most important. Yeah.
Good. What questions, board members, do you have for Steve on this topic?
It's very exciting.
Thank you
Not
for.
a question. Sorry, go ahead, Nathaniel.
Sure.
I was just going to say thank you guys both for following through on that. I think it's a great strategy. So, sorry, April.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to say I'm looking at that spreadsheet, the campus improvement expenditure list, and this is all written out very clearly. So if we need to refer back to it for those numbers and the specific buildings and whatnot, it's all that information is there. So whoever updated that, bravo.
Good, thank you. At least we all can be on the same page.
Well, it sounds like, Steve, then I'd say the next step would be to get a more concrete estimate from Wolf on what replacing the units on that particular building would be. And again, that's, I think, a very sensible approach. Do one building at a time. Presumably, the units work together in a sense to cool the building or heat it, as the case may be. So that seems sensible to get all in one estimate. So once you have that, then we can bring that back to the board, and the board can approve the expenditure.
Absolutely, I can do that for you guys now.
Okay.
Steve, I know that you have talked to Wolf, and that plan makes a lot of sense. I agree with everybody on that front. Once it comes time to actually pick a building, are we going to do any kind of competitive bidding process to see which vendor can actually do this for us in the most efficient way?
Yeah, absolutely, Gregory. I don't think it's safe to put all your eggs in one basket, and there's a lot of competition in the market. So I think it'd be fair to at least get a few solid bids in there to see what's going to work best for us. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Very good, Steve. Yeah, thank you, Steve and John, for running with that. The next item was rekeying doors and installing panic bars. Again, we had a good discussion a month ago at the board meeting, and the takeaway was to get a revised estimate from the the company we were working with, because they had given us an estimate just on rekeying, but not on panic bars. And the question was, well, if they're here doing one, could they do the other at the same time, and what would that cost? And we know that that's a rekeying campus, and ensuring security is a significant issue for us. So where do we stand with that one?
Well, I just want to defer just for a second to maybe John. I had heard about the panic bar update, and I think John had a little financial update for us on that before I can continue with the rest of it, maybe?
Sure. So what he told me, this is Alcatraz lock, was that if you have 50 people plus one, that's the time that you need to put in a panic bar. That's the code that he quoted me. I can give you I think I sent you the numbers of the code. But he said if you still want to pursue it, that it would be about $500 a door. They're composite doors, so it's slightly more complex to install them. That is to say that you have glass and metal, and it has to be reinforced in a certain way. What he was going to install has a handle on it, which meets the ADA requirements. So that's the information I have in terms of the price and the code for the panic bars and the handles.
Okay.
Matt, I just wanted to ask Christy, as far as the ADA component of that, I know rekeying is a critical step. Are the panic bars necessary, in your opinion?
I don't think so. Not from an ADA standpoint. And I concur with what John shared.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just add real quick to that, Nathan, just to catch everybody else up too, so you know, is that this rekeying is specifically for the grades. That's grades 1 through 8. The high school we're not doing because that's already on a different key system. And the early childhood, I had rekeyed, I think last year, because we're having some issues there. So they're kind of on their own system. So it's just the grades 1 through 8, which kind of, makes that circle a little bit smaller for us. And to add, to what Christy said, I think this upgrade that we would make if we didn't install panic bars is a great one nonetheless, because the hardware we have on there is pretty residential, and it's held up for this long, but it definitely does not conform to ADA standards. So we'd be kind of upping the level on that one and putting in something that's way more industrial and probably will last us a lot longer than we have now. So I think that's a win-win, and the cost from Alcatraz is pretty good. So I think those three things together, I'll give it a double thumbs up.
If I could just add, the idea was to rekey the buildings that are currently operating under the master key. So to Steve's point, high school has a different key. It is considered a master key, but it is just for the high school. And the early childhood, like he said, has already been rekeyed. I do wonder, Steve, do we want to add, because the master key also opens the farmhouse, if we want to add those locks as well?
It seems like it, Christy. Because
it was my understanding. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, John. That's fine.
It was my understanding that the farmhouse was included in his price, as well as the administration building. But I think the administration has been taken care of. So we might be able to knock a little bit of money off there. Am I correct, Christy?
No, the administration main entrances are still under the master key. We did rekey an internal office downstairs in order to secure
Okay.
supplies and PPE and music equipment.
I think, John, Christy,
Okay. So, yes, sir.
I was just going to say, I think to answer Christy's question, I think it would be in our best interest to keep the farmhouse on a new key system, or put it on a new key system, only because if I know there's not much going on in that building, but we do house quite a bit of computers and things of that nature. And if we're going to be housing that as for students that come to work during this school year, it might be beneficial to kind of keep that under lock and key. You know what I'm saying? A little bit.
I agree. And I thought when I looked at the proposal, it did include the farmhouse.
Good.
So I just wanted verification. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For sure.
All right. So then we've talked about a handful of different things here. So we're saying do not need panic bars. So it's just replacing locks and door handles. And it's for the farmhouse and the grades and a couple of the doors on the administration offices. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And ballpark expense on that was that the 5,000 or so?
I think it was 5,000, right, John?
It was a little bit over.
Correct again, yes. A little bit over 5, yeah.
Yeah, it's 5,200.
It's 5280.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the thing here. It's 5280.
All right. I just wasn't entirely sure what that estimate covered. Hey, that all sounds fine with me. Any objections, board members, to spending the 5,280 to do that work? No. Okay. All right.
Hey, Matt, just one question. Sorry,
Yeah.
It took me a while to get my microphone on. Christy, are there some other items? What about, securing campus? Should we be taking a look at some other things as well? I read some things, you had some concerns about this needing done. And maybe we should talk about those and get those done as well because of, the extra computers and different things we'll have on campus. And we won't have it populated as much as we would during a typical school year. We want to make sure that campus is secure.
Absolutely. And so we have done some of that work, as mentioned, well, the work that I outlined in that needed to be done in prior board reports. So one of the things that we've done is actually, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was back in March or so, we did rekey or put new locks on the front gate and the back gate, which is typically accessed by employees for parking. So those have been updated, and there are very limited keys, and there is a process associated with checking out those keys, so we can account for who has them. There is one lock that still needs to be changed, and I believe it's what I refer to as the person gate by the farmhouse. Is that accurate, Steve?
The person gate?
Yeah, the person gate.
You mean the access for animal care people?
No. Or maybe that's what they have been accessing, faculty who don't have a key yet to the gates. Is that the gate that they've been accessing?
Do you mean the one for the driveway?
Not the big one, the person gate, the small gate.
The person gate.
There was, well, let me rephrase it.
I know it's a little pedestrian gate on the side. Yes, that would need an update too. But I think that was on a different lock because Animal Care would access that on their own accord.
Got it. Okay.
I think so. We kept it a little different.
Okay.
I think Michelle might chime in here, so maybe she could add to that. But I think that's why we did it like that.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that gate was the same as the animal care gate. So thank you.
If
Are
I
there
can,
animals going through it too?
We don't need panic right there either. So,
Get a
okay.
animal gate, maybe.
can I
Yes.
have a little, so that is what we use for animal care access. So then we don't have to have access to any other keys or anything like that. It is a lock with a code on it. So, and no animals go through it. Hopefully.
No, they're pretty smart.
So yeah, I think we're leaving it like that for that reason for now.
Okay. So then that takes care of that. So yes, John Elling, we've updated the perimeter in terms of those locks. And so that, in addition to changing the locks we've just discussed, I think we'll be in pretty good shape in terms of securing the buildings.
Great, thank you.
Steve, what about the gate, where the old driveway used to be? Where the farmhouse is, where there's a fire lane right there. How is that locked?
That has a padlock on it, John. There's like a combo padlock with the fire department and us. I do think I need to get an extra lock for that one on the updated key that we have for the main gate and the back gate. I think we just need one more for that one, if that's what you're at.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll do that.
Steve, just to clarify though, that wouldn't be something that we'd need to engage the locksmith to do. That's something that your crew can do.
Yeah, Christy, I just need to order the padlock. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, good. Anything else then on keys and locks? All right, so that's good. I have one or two other items here. One was around a lawnmower, Steve, and this was another one where I think we were wondering, boy, is there a way to extend the life of it or spread the cost somehow? But I don't have any of the particulars.
Yeah, well, it's like we've revived a dead body so many times it's not worth it anymore. So I feel for Hector in that regard too. It's time for an update because we have a rather large campus, and we've done our best to make it work, but time's kind of running out on that. And we do spend a lot of money on maintenance on that too, so that's also piling up, no joke. So when I spoke to John, he had brought this up to me a couple weeks ago about you guys looking into this. So what I told him is I have a various network of vendors that we deal with and or other people that I want to go around and get bids on something a little better than we have, and to see what we can do. And if we needed to go on some kind of a payment plan to absorb costs in a better way, it's probably something that you guys might appreciate. So I'm going to look into that probably next week. I was just trying to get everybody ready for school and make sure everybody had what they needed. And then once that starts, I can get some facts and figures from you guys on that, if that makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
All right, then the last thing that I had on my list was expenses related to anything we needed to do to campus or the buildings for COVID-related reasons. But it sounds like, Christy, you've already begun making some of those changes and expenditures in anticipation of the grant, the $50,000 grant, and that makes a ton of sense. I just want to make sure we ask, is there anything else? Is there anything else we think the school needs, either for COVID or for other purposes that we haven't talked about or touched on?
I don't think so. We were working together on more hand washing stations throughout the campus in anticipation of reopening when that does in fact happen. I think Steve has come up with some great ideas to minimize the cost, but also permit us to include those, and those would be more they would be more temporary fixtures that can be moved around campus. And Steve, I'll defer to you at this point.
Sure. Yeah, I think, Matt, we had some ideas. Some ideas were kicked around in the summer, but I think as far as that goes, what Christy's mentioning, now that really nobody's kind of coming back for a while, and we have this very minimal crew, I think that the feeling was maybe we should just kind of hold on to the cash that we have and save it for when we really need to maybe make those updates. You know, if school resumes in a few months, then we can get that on the docket. But I think now we're just kind of in a holding pattern in that way, if that makes any sense, right, Christy?
Yes, yeah.
That's fine, and that makes a ton of sense. I just know that there's a little bit of lead up involved. If we want to spend some amount, then we have to wait for a board meeting. We have to make sure that the groups had a chance to consider and things like that. So that's fine. If there's nothing there, there's nothing there right now. If we don't have those needs, we don't have those needs right now. Just want to make sure that we're at least asking the question.
Sure. And in terms of preparedness, we do have on site all of the necessary PPE and cleaning products needed to comply with the mitigation plan and county and local ordinances. So we're good to go there. We already have those materials, and a lot of the county, for instance, has provided schools with packages as well. So that's helped us build up our inventory. So any expenditures that we have incurred have been relatively minimal, and so they really don't rise to the level of needing any sort of input or approval on amounts to date.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. Let's not belabor it. We'll keep moving along here. All right, Steve Paolo, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Thanks for all the stuff you've been doing for the campus, and we'll look forward to hearing and seeing the estimates on the air conditioning units.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a nice night,
Thank
Steve.
Hector for us as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, Matt, before we move on,
yeah.
I think we need an actual motion to approve the rekeying expense since it's over that $5,000 threshold.
Okay.
Just so that it's clear for the record, Christy has the authority to spend that money. So I would move to approve up to $6,000 expense and rekeying the schools per the discussion we had this evening.
It's fine. I'll second that. Any further discussion on that topic? No? All right. All in favor? It's unanimous. Good. All right, Gregory, thank you for that point of order. And Priscilla, I think now that we've wrapped up our facilities-related expense discussion, unless the board has any further questions for Priscilla, I think we can let Priscilla get back to her evening at this point as well. Good. Any last questions for Priscilla, gang? No?
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
You too, Priscilla. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is fundraising needs, and in particular the consumables fees. I know a few of you have been involved in chatting about this. Nathaniel in particular, I think, has connected with Christy about it. So maybe one, and well, we've talked about fundraising, the need to be strategic and organized around our fundraising efforts. We've talked about that before. Nathaniel walked us through a plan and a proposal at our July 15 meeting. So perhaps we can get a little bit of an update either on the sort of broader strategy, but then also in specific around the need for money to help pay for the consumables. So I'm not sure, Nathaniel or Christy, which one of you would like to get started?
Yeah, I think in the spirit of that presentation, the focus right now is trying to collect as much money as we can for what we're calling the educational investment campaign, and even staying true to the dollar amounts depending on what grade is associated with that, I think is still fair. I think it's $250 for early childhood, and it's $300 for the next group, and then maybe somebody has that actually, so I'm not just going off the top of my head. But one thing that's come up that the discussion has sort of evolved into is the teachers, having them remind the parents as they interact, because they're great points of contact to the parents. Even as far as justifying those expenses, the teachers ultimately are the ones responsible to help, facilitate the best form of education. And these special supplies obviously are an integral part. There's things about them that are different than just basic supplies in school. So just an encouragement. I think we do this anyway, and they know, and they do it already. But if the teachers can continue to sort of be an extension of us and allow us to try to collect those dollar amounts, that would be wonderful help for us. Sorry, my child's in need of some supplies. The other part of that same topic is we are working on just a small marketing piece that sort of depicts some of those supplies, so people realize what it is that they're getting and why they cost what they cost. And anyway, so that will be forthcoming. It's based on something April has built prior, and it's something that Christy has agreed to kind of help distribute through some of the different medias we have, probably namely Parent Square, perhaps email, and on the social media that we control. So expect to see that in the coming weeks. It's not a tomorrow thing for us. It's just as parents can, if they can come out of pocket and help facilitate that, we think that's really important. So I don't want to distract from that subject by getting into the strategy beyond it. I think this is the base hit we need to pursue right now and get as much as we can in that regard, and then we can move on to the next item later.
Makes a ton of sense. We haven't made a formal ask to our parents yet, meaning the parents in our community. So it sounds like you guys are working on an ask of sorts, a piece of marketing, whatever we want to call it, and we would get that out in the next couple of weeks. Then is that the idea? Okay. And Christy, that works on your end? Yeah. Okay. April, go ahead.
I was just going to say the ask is technically in the re-enrollment or enrollment process. It's all there, all of the information that we're talking about, including the amounts and what it's for. It was all in the enrollment packet that you filled out when you signed your kid up for school or re-enrolled them. So this is just really more of a reminder and something we can keep putting out there to nudge and say, hey, have you paid it yet? Have you paid it yet? And just to remind parents. I know I just sent an email today asking Jessica saying, did I pay it? I don't remember. Was it automatic? And so I think it's helpful just to put that out over and over and over again and remind parents, because we forget, we're busy.
Sure.
And it is a new feature that we've included, that billing piece, not only for other things, private program tuition, but also a way in which parents can pay those consumable fees. So yeah, it's a new process, and so definitely, sending out reminders and instructions on how to do that will be helpful.
All right. Good. Anything else on that topic then?
We want to talk fundraising, or are you just talking specifically about that?
I think what Nathaniel was suggesting was we push off the broader fundraising conversation to a subsequent meeting, because the thing that's right in front of us is the consumables fees. I'm fine with that. Is that what you meant, Nathaniel?
That's what I meant.
Okay.
Give it some time to, fill in the coffer there, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Okay. All right. Well, then next up on the list here is update on the RSF negotiations. And I thought I would provide this update. John Elling, if I miss anything, please let me know. And really, we're not at the stage yet where this board needs to discuss the specifics. I don't believe, but if and when we do that, we would need to, or we should do that in executive session. So let me see if I can just provide a general update without the need to do that. But of course, this is our primary loan. This is, in essence, our first mortgage. And the outstanding balance is just below 1.3 million. And the way that the existing loan is structured is it was a 5-year loan with a balloon payment due at the end, and the timing for that balloon payment is about 6 weeks away. And we're not seeking to pay that balloon payment, but rather to renegotiate and extend out the term of the mortgage. We've had, John Elling and I have had discussions with RSF, and that was just last week. Met with them to discuss the proposal that RSF provided. We were able to ask some questions and gain a better understanding of the proposal that RSF was making. We also spoke with the lender of a different loan that the school has secured, and those conversations have gone well. They've been reasonably productive. Further, we're in talks with our outside counsel to help us document and guide us appropriately as we have these discussions. So we will likely be providing some responses to RSF on the proposed term sheet that they sent. We'll likely be sending some of those responses in the next week or so, I hope, timing wise, and then likely bring it all to this board, for full discussion, either at our meeting in 2 weeks, depending on the timing of those negotiations, or at our meeting on the 8th, I believe it is, September 8th. So that's the general state of things. Conversations are going well and proceeding normally, and more to come. Keeping it at a high level, any questions on that?
Just one. It's in the spirit of Gregory's questions about getting competitive bids. Have we, I remember some time ago, there was some discussion with MidFirst potentially lending to a nonprofit. I assume that those communications have ceased, in the past, but just curious if there's other lending institutions we've explored.
Well, I'd say that's precisely the type of conversation I want to have in executive session, not in a public session, right? So the executive session laws, as I understand it, don't make you have your contract negotiations in public. So if you don't mind, Nathaniel, I'd say why don't you hold on to that question?
Okay.
All right. Next on our list then is Parent Council update. So Michelle, please join us in the meeting here. As always, the board is super grateful for your efforts and for the efforts of Parent Council. We know it's a lot of work. We know it requires a lot of attention to detail. There are a lot of folks who spend a lot of time and effort in support of Parent Council. And of course, Parent Council supports the school and our faculty as well. So we're very grateful, and it's nice to see you here. And we're anxious to hear your update.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. So we had our funding items voted on and approved. And let me see. We had, sorry, I don't have the full amount. It was 18,000 that we were voting on, 16,000, taking out our money that we set aside for Parent Council needs. But Hope and Health, that is kind of giving for those in need. That one was voted for $1,267. There's a high school history and humanities resources that was requested, and that was $523 that was awarded. For our book club, we are going to purchase 10 copies of The Essence of Waldorf Education, and that was $117. For a community communication facilitator, that was $2,234. Community education was $1,400. Tower Gardens had 3 different ones. They do a few different things in the high school that they use the Tower Gardens for. And they were $312, $289, and $250. And then for professional development and training, that's for the teachers and faculty. It was a total of $10,435 that went to them. That's always our biggest request and our biggest, what we spend the most money on. So everyone that asked for less than $1,100 was awarded that amount. Sometimes some of them were like $200 or $700 or something like that. Everything over that, all of the requests were awarded $1,110. So we were pretty happy that we were able to give the teachers and staff more than we were last year. That's one of our biggest things. So this year we're going to have a new procedure for when we do reimbursements for Parent Council funding. So it'll go through Parent Council first before it goes through through DMS accounting. That way we can track it and know exactly what's going out and coming in too. So the letters for those disbursements that I just talked about, those went out today. We also decided that all of the events and meetings for the rest of 2020 will be either virtual or distanced if the situation permits. So all of our parent council meetings will be on Zoom most likely, but some sort of virtual. And then our first parent council meeting is August 18th, which is next Tuesday. Again, that'll be via Zoom at 7 p.m. And then after that, it's generally the first Tuesday, but like November that's voting night or voting day. So we pushed that back a week, but that should be going out. It will be added to the calendar and should get information on that. One other thing that I wanted to mention when you guys were talking about consumables, talking to the community about that and whatnot, I feel that, you know, the board report at parent council, or even just somebody coming specifically to talk about that, it would be another avenue to get the word out. So I encourage somebody to speak about that somehow. April will do it. Thank you.
You may end up with more than one of us.
Yeah, I was going to say, once I have that document in hand, I'll be able to share it with Laura and she can screen share it. We'll have more information to come. And she has all that information anyway on the new website. So, but we will definitely be talking about it more.
Okay. Sounds good. And we welcome everybody from the community. You guys are all in the community. So we welcome you at parent council meetings. And if you would like to speak about it also, Nathaniel, more than welcome. So I think that's all we have for the report. So any questions?
Michelle, congratulations. It sounds like it was a really successful voting process, and you guys were really generous with our faculty. That's fantastic. That's really generous of our parent council to support the faculty in that way. Yeah, that's an eye-popping figure. Nice. And it sounds like also we're able to fund a number of other significant items of one type or another. If you don't mind, I'm curious about there were two items that sounded similar a little bit. I think it was community communications and community education, two separate line items, collectively. I'm not sure I got the numbers right, but a little over $3,000 or so. I'm just curious as to what that might be.
I can definitely speak on the community education. That was something that I actually put forth last year, but it was never fully used. The community education is something or someone like Kim John Payne coming and speaking about like parenting and just it helps not just the parents, but also teachers and that sort of thing. We left it open to community education this year, not strictly to Kim John Payne, because last year, Torrin Finzer, we used part of that money towards that also. So just any kind of education on that part. The other one, it is a little bit different. It's still, working with the community at large, and I'm trying to remember what was on the request. I don't have it right in front of me, but it's communication related. So
that's okay.
sometimes,
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Michelle.
Right.
And if you don't mind, maybe just email it to me. I'm just curious. We think a lot about how our community interacts with one another, and we see a lot of things that we like, and we see some things that we don't particularly
Right.
like. So if parent council is thinking of helping and investing in that space, I'm all ears. Just would like to know a little bit more about it. Maybe
that's
you can,
pretty much, that's a lot of what it is just helping to facilitate how we all communicate. But
good.
we can definitely send a little more information on that from the request.
Sure. That'd be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to talk about this process. So I missed one of the meeting. I was having technical difficulties. And of course, that was the meeting I had to attend before in order to vote. Of course, Murphy's Law. But I did get to see all of the asks. And it was really cool to see how every realm was touched, and they were really varied. So that was really interesting to see how detailed they were. And then when it came to voting, Lori Heaney has this down to just a science. Like, it was 5 minutes. They were in and out. They were on their computers and then just waiting because the votes were so quick. It was so organized. So props to her and props to Michelle for putting it together. It was awesome. And as Matt said, that the amounts that were approved are just, it's fantastic. So thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Parent Council, for all of your hard work.
Absolutely. Yes, the voting process was so easy. Laura made it amazing, and I have to give her all the props for that. So thank you.
All right, Michelle. Thanks as always for the report and for your leadership of Parent Council.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Have a nice night.
Thank you. You too.
All right, for the rest of us, we still have other topics to address. How's everybody doing? Do we need a 5-minute break or press on? Who needs a 5-minute break? No. All right, nobody. All right. Hey, we're hopeful. We're thinking the home stretch is here. We'll see.
I was just going to ask, how long is the home stretch?
I don't know. We'll see. I don't think this next part will take us all that long. We've been very familiar with all of these issues, but Christy, why don't you join us back in the meeting here? The next topic is all things related to COVID-19 and the school reopening, virtually, of course, but reopening nonetheless. And there are some things to discuss, and then we, the board, are to evaluate and hopefully approve at least 3 different things here: the distance learning plan, the mitigation plan, and the on-site support plan. Looks like we may have lost April for a moment. So hopefully she rejoins us here quickly. Christy, I started the meeting with a giant thank you to you and the staff and administration and faculty, because I suspect a lot of folks are burning the midnight oil, having things come together. We're all sort of going through this together, figuring it out as we go, coming across difficult issues, having to make difficult choices, and but it's been wonderful to see it start to really come together in a very meaningful and tangible way, which is great. So why don't we, board, why don't we touch on Christy's report at first, see if there's any discussion that needs to happen from that. I think the key theme of that report and these other items are all about readiness to open, readiness for the year ahead. But any questions about Christy's report? All right, I'm not hearing any. Christy, you mentioned in there struggling to find laptops. I imagine they're in high demand. So do you have what you need? Do you need something from the board? How can we be helpful here?
So since my board report, I do have an additional update. We were able to locate some laptops from a vendor. The laptop need was primarily for the teachers who didn't have their own personal devices that they preferred to use, as well as teachers who were wanting to teach remotely on campus in their classroom. So after a lot of research and ensuring safety, the teachers were offered the option. If they had all of the equipment that they needed in their home and were set up and ready to provide the distance learning to the children, then they are able to do so during this remote period. So we do have quite a few teachers who have chosen that option, which has reduced the amount of need. So far, laptops, anything office related, school related, it's on back order, it's out of stock. I mean, we're talking even, furniture, desks, things of that nature. Not that we are looking for those, but I was successful in getting enough webcams and wireless microphones for any teacher who needed them. We were struggling with getting those laptops. We have currently 5 that Mr. Allen has kindly offered his services to help me get them ready to check out to teachers. I do have a priority list based on need. So we'll get that process going, and it should be a fine transition to start the school year on Monday. I do have some that will be coming hopefully within the next week. But otherwise, they have what they need in order to start on Monday.
Great. All right. Nathaniel, thanks for pitching in. Helpful. All right. I've texted with April. She's trying. She's trying to get back in. She got bounced off. All right. So there are 3 plans and items that we need to address. It is a bit substantive, so I do want April to be here for those. Christy, was there, before we get into those 3 plans, was there anything else that you needed to raise to the board's attention related to COVID or technology or needs or anything of that sort?
Yes. So we conducted the family survey, the family selection form. We've been evaluating that data and then following up on families who either didn't respond and are still enrolled or had questions. It's a lot of questions. We're working very hard to get the answers. One of the things that is at the forefront of many parents' minds are the laptops or devices that need to be checked out for their students. It looks like, based on a pretty current number, that we're going to have enough, but I'm thinking we're going to need another 5 to 10 Chromebooks. So that's where we're at. I have not been successful in finding those, but we're working on it. Again, those costs would come out of the COVID fund. So we're trying to be sensitive to that as well. Obviously, our priority is to serve our students. I have had some wonderful parents in this community reach out and offer donations to help fund and help those families who are in need. So it's been truly lovely and supportive. But we, as you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there will be hiccups, and we don't know what they're going to be yet, but we will work through them together, and hopefully they will not be too disruptive. And I just echo your sentiment that on behalf of the faculty and staff, we just appreciate everyone's patience, and we know that this is a very new area for all of us to enter, and we are very hopeful, and we are continuing to plan up until the last minute to get as many logistical things worked out and ready to go for our kids on Monday.
All right, that's great. And always nice to hear when parents are offering up to help out. All right, April, you are back with us. All right, can we just do a quick sound check, make sure that we can hear you?
Yeah, does that work?
It does. Okay, good.
My daughter was using my iPad, and I had it set on the circle to turn off at 8 o'clock. So I booted myself out. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. All right. Well, let's dive into then the specifics that operationally we need to do. One is the distance learning plan. Christy, thank you for obviously completing it, and with help from others, I'm sure, pulling that together and sending it to the board to review. I'm reminded, as I was looking through that, it's a good reminder that we are, of course, a public charter school. And so we have to deal with the state and the state's requirements, and this is one of them, to put together this plan and to submit it. It's due on Friday, I believe. And I certainly thought it was comprehensive and thorough and well thought out. And again, it was glad to hear that that the LDC had signed off on it as well. Board, any discussion or questions on the distance learning plan?
Yeah, I had just two questions. There's a section on social emotional learning, and it says that some parents will have training. Can you give us just a brief idea of what that might look like?
So that section, April, is not what I put in. It was just kind of line items of what the state was looking for us to answer. So all of the columns that you saw, aside from, our individual input into the boxes, everything was preset and we can't modify it. So The state, in particular ADE, is taking social and emotional learning very seriously during this uncertain period. And there is training opportunities, some of which are mandated for the upper grades teachers to take, and then provide that specific support to their students as needed. That training needs to be completed by the end of this calendar year, so December 2020. So over the course of the next few months, our teachers will be doing that, specifically grades 6 through 12. And then anything within that training that the teachers receive will be shared with parents, resources, training opportunities for themselves to also kind of have an internal checklist of what to look for with your kiddos as they go through this process, and just really just an emotional and social check-in. How's everybody doing? So more details will be forthcoming, especially as, and I will be taking the training as well. And then we will share that information with the parents as appropriate.
April, did you have a second question?
I did, but now I'm not sure it's valid if it was something that was already just put in there in the template, or if it's specific to our school. I'll ask Christy offline. I'm sure I'll have a bunch of questions later anyway, and I'll just send them to Christy. It's fine.
Okay. Any other questions from our board members? Okay, I thought it was really well done and straightforward. So again, thank you, Christy. I think Mr. Tanner may have gotten bounced off as well. Of course, he's very familiar with the distance learning plan, so I'm not too worried about moving on to the next topic, which is, and we can do our voting towards the end. The next up is the mitigation plan. And hopefully I get the summary right, but it's really an overview of our commitment to providing a safe, healthy, and engaging learning environment to all of our students, and doing so in a way that adheres to strategies that mitigate the risk of spread and infection. Thus the term mitigation plan. So pretty clear what is intended here. I think it is, of course, relevant even to our all remote start, because we do have folks on campus, and I think we're anticipating at least a few students being there because of a need to be there. And so it does seem relevant and important. Also, I'd say thorough and well done. I did have one or two questions on this one, but again, I'll throw it out to the board members first. So did any of you have any questions about the mitigation plan? All right, well, I'll dive in with mine then. I did notice that there were a few of the tables, Christy, that did not include our high school students. And so maybe that's by design. I just couldn't quite tell. So for instance, pages 2 through 4 have academic schedules, and there just isn't one included for the high school.
That Matt did not transfer over. We do have one for the high school. The high school was included in other parts. I don't know why there isn't a similar chart, but what you're referring to is the academic schedule for the grades or the realms.
Right.
The one for the high school should be in here, so thank you for noticing that. Yep. I will insert that. It is, just for everybody's knowledge, it is no different from what was shared at the high school orientation with parents that took place on August 6th, I believe. It's just a matter of transferring that information over.
I figured, and similar, the student drop-off on page 6, and then the recess and lunch on page 9. And I wonder if it's the same thing. It just certainly there will be a drop-off when we do reopen in person, and recess and lunch.
Thank you for that feedback. I actually need to make that more clear. The high school is different because we have older students, so their protocol is going to be different from the youngers who need to be escorted. So I will update those sections. The attendance protocols do include high school, or yes, do include high school. Recesses, those are for the younger grades, and that's why high school is not reflected in that section. The kids don't like to be called going out on recess at that age. I know, I have one of them.
Okay. So just a couple of quick edits due on that one.
Yeah.
Any other, those are the only questions I had on that one. Any other questions from our board members on the mitigation plan? John Elling?
Yeah, I had one, Matt. Hey, Christy. So looking at the academic schedules, you have it broken down, grades 1, 2, 3, 5, and so on. Most of the instruction is in the morning, and then it I guess it stops about 11:10. For the rest of the day, and I know you have it listed in there as group intervention, and I wonder, is that so students who, may not have quite grasped the instruction from the morning, if they or their parents have questions, are the teachers available up until that 2:00 time? For individual or small group help?
Yeah, so the schedules that are reflected in the mitigation plan are those that are being utilized during this solely remote period.
Correct.
When we reopen, this will have to be updated to reflect in-person instruction. It's the requirement is that we submit this at this point as we stand, and then the expectation from the charter board and the state is that we update and revise as our plans evolve. So looking at the schedules in this mitigation plan, again, it's the remote schedules, and then yes, most instruction, depending on grade, ends anywhere between, live instruction that is, ends anywhere between 10:30 and 12:25, 12:55, that's more of the high school. And then after that, the interventions, small group sessions, one-on-one sessions, all of those details are being provided to parents during the parent meetings that are occurring. They were discussed at the high school orientation, and then they will be rolled out by teacher preference and structure, and that information is being shared to each class by each teacher. And yes, interventions include our
we'll
support
be able to receive an update then on what they're all doing for that intervention that the students may need.
Right, that's class and grade and student specific. So that's why it's not provided in incredible detail in the mitigation plan.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Christy, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's more information about the Schedule 2 in that slide deck that you posted on Parent Square. And I don't think we got that as a board. I think it just went through Parent Square. So it might help for John Elling, who I'm not sure if he's on Parent Square or not, but you know, I'm on there because I have a kid. So that might be beneficial for him to have that slide deck.
Absolutely. Yes, I can certainly share that with the board. And John, what April's referring to is I provided an update to families, just giving a very high level overview of what to expect as we go into remote learning. And it was broken down by grade. Just a general schedule of what to expect and when the start and end times were going to be. So I will share that with you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else then on the mitigation plan? Okay. Next is the on-site support plan. So as a reminder, we, DMS, are participating in this for several reasons. One of them is, of course, to help our students and to help the parents in our community, to help the students who have a need to be, who have a need to be there. And another reason we're doing it is a prerequisite to the guaranteed funding from the state. So really good reasons to be doing this. Christy, I know we have the option to offer it somewhere else if we partner with someone else, such as the YMCA or something like that. But am I right that we're planning to offer this on DMS campus to start?
Correct. Based on the numbers that we received in response to that family selection form, and then the follow-up that our administration did with families, we have a number of students. It's a small number, so we can definitely accommodate them on campus and adhering to all of the health and safety protocols that we need to do for those students. And the executive order does require charter and public schools to provide what they call on-site support services, but yes, those support services can be off campus or with multiple schools in a district. It could be just one school that's assigned for that service. But yes, we are currently going to do it in person. If those, we are going to do the on-site services at DMS. If those numbers increase and change, we will need to modify that. So we do have a couple of backup potential locations, but those do cost. And so we wanted to start at least with on campus, and then if we need to make changes, we will do so.
Okay. And the criteria were included in here on page 3 and how we define need. Are those criteria from the state or are those ones that we have devised?
No, those are from the state.
Okay. And do you have to satisfy one of those in order to avail yourself of this, being able to come to, I'm not saying it clearly, take advantage of the on-site support services?
It is based on need. The idea behind it is that it is safer to keep the children home or, without, with reducing the amount of social interaction with others. And so that's the premise behind it, but there are certain families who just need that opportunity, that space. For instance, if they just have no way to access the internet and yet have devices, they could come, to campus or wherever we would hold those, to get that internet connection in order to follow along with the remote learning. The on-site services plan, just to be clear, is not where the students are going to be. Those students who need this service are not going to be placed in classrooms with their teachers who may be teaching on-site, albeit remotely. So there isn't going to be any instruction. It's going to be more guidance and support to help the students navigate their space and stay safe and attend to any sort of technical difficulties. And yes, this list that I included in here is it's a way for schools to identify priorities when assessing what space is needed and can be provided. So yes, we utilize these priorities first, and then after that, we can, open it up and provide that space to others. But we have to consider these first. And just for the board's information, as well as the communities, after these plans are approved by the board, the requirements from the state provide that we as a school need to update the parent body. And so there will be notices sent out about all of these documents that we're talking about. There are also requirements about posting these plans on our website for everyone to access. So all of that will occur after tonight's meeting. Much of it, the deadline is by Monday. So all of that will be up for review. It is subject to revision and change. And there are many, many deadlines associated with notifications, when they need to go, who they need to go to. So parents will have an opportunity to see everything that we're talking about tonight. I just can't share it before it's approved.
Makes sense. All right. Any other questions, board members, on the on-site support plan? All right. Well, those are the three plans that we need to approve. So, Christy, do you have a preference, one at a time or all three at the same time?
According to the requirements, it does not matter as long as they are specifically identified and approved in the minutes.
All right. Well, then let's do them one at a time. Gregory, did you have a question?
Yeah, I know that we talked about the face mask policy generally at our last meeting, but my understanding was that is something that has to be specifically approved as well. Is that your take, Christy, or am I misremembering that?
When I shared it with the board last month, it was more informative and for feedback. That was one of the first policies that we wanted to disseminate and get some feedback on. Since that time, there has been additional guidelines and guidance issued, and I have, just like all schools, have been informed that the face mask policy is not required to be approved by the governing board of the school, but they may approve it if they wish to do so. So it is within your discretion, which is why I shared it with you last month.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then why don't we start with the order that we went. First was the distance learning plan. Why don't I go ahead and make the motion then? Just want to make sure I'm getting the name of this right. for the approval of the distance learning plan as provided to the board by our executive director on August 12th, 2020.
I'll second that, Matt.
Thank you. Is that artfully worded enough? Okay.
It is. Thank you.
Any discussion? Any further discussion on that? No. All right. All in favor? Aye. All right. That is unanimous. All right. Next is the mitigation plan. This one's perhaps a tad more complicated. So I will move for the approval of the mitigation plan provided to the board on August 12th by our executive director, subject to the edits we discussed in the meeting. Period.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, April.
Sorry. Yeah, just
You're breaking up just a little bit, April. Sorry.
I just said I would second, but then I realized we might need to discuss it before I do that. I don't know.
That's all right. That's all right. Is that one artfully worded enough?
I believe so. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any additional discussion on that one? No? All right. All in favor? Oh, wait, hang on. John Elling, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did just have one. Down on the time that they're supposed to log in by for being marked tardy or absent. I hadn't got a chance to look at all of these really closely for when they came in. And so I'm kind of still going through them. Sorry about that. And I'm trying to look and see what page it's on, Christy.
6.
And maybe I'm misunderstanding. Maybe you can clear it up for me.
It starts on page 6.
Yeah, about the attendance. And I guess I don't even see what page it's on. But it talks about the attendance and it for the remote learners. And if they don't log in to Zoom by 8:30, they're marked absent. And I just wouldn't, like if they logged in at 8:45, we wouldn't want that to be an absentee and the student not get counted there for our attendance and so on.
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. The attendance for remote learning is broken out by time as to when they log on. We are requiring all students to log on at particular times. We have staggered those. So for students, for households who have multiple students across the grades, those are staggered. And there is a window of time. So this is going to take an adjustment. The teachers also have, for those who are going to be doing the asynchronous pieces, they will have check-ins and other ways in which we will take attendance to ensure that they are participating. But we are required to take attendance, and this is how we're going to do it. It's our primary method. we do have a modified attendance policy that is more detailed than just these overall attendance timeframes that are reflected in the mitigation plan. And those are being shared, that information is being shared by each teacher throughout their teacher meetings with the parents.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that if a student logged in, you know, for example, early childhood, it has that student is absent if they do not log into Zoom by 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And if they logged in at 9:05, they're not going to be counted absent for the whole day, correct?
Not necessarily the whole day. It will depend. The expectation, just like as if you were in person reporting to school, is you have to report your absence by a certain time, or else it would be considered unexcused. So that's why these times are put in there. There is follow-up associated, especially as we start this process, to find out if parents are having troubles logging in at these time frames in order to report their attendance, saying I'm here or I'm going to be absent. But it really is no different from the expectations if we were opening in person. You would be considered tardy if you didn't report to class by 8:05. Same concept. So we're giving a little bit of leeway, about 15 minutes in between marking someone present, tardy, and absent for the day. We do have other reporting mechanisms. Again, those are more in the attendance policy.
Okay. So how many hours does a student need to be present for to be marked present for the day, even if they are tardy?
Right.
How many hours is the policy that they need to be there for?
Well, it's they need to check in the morning, and that's the attendance piece that's reflected in the mitigation plan, so that we can provide that information to the state, so that we get credit for taking their attendance that they showed up. Now, for those who have issues and cannot stay the entire time of the live session, for instance, and EC is not really a good example, but if we just move to grades, for instance, everybody's going to be doing a check-in between that time frame. If they can't stay for the entire main lesson that will follow, they can then do the asynchronous part later that day. The main lesson will be recorded. It will be available for viewing later that day, and then teachers are implementing certain check-ins to make sure that the student actually participated in that main lesson by viewing it. So there are those daily check-ins throughout the day, but we are expecting those to just check in at that time saying, I'm present. Then we can say they've checked in, they are present in terms of attendance. We can report that to the state. And then any other check-ins that occur throughout the day, those will be handled by the teacher and will be considered as being present. So we do have very detailed instructions, at least internally, of how we're accounting for this and reporting it. But I think your question is, if they check in at 8:05 to attend class, do they have to stay the entire time? The answer is it would be preferable, but no, they do not. They can later view it that day.
Well, my actual question was, on here, and I understand it's going to be, I just think, especially in this remote learning phase with the checking in and that, we probably have to be really careful to be mindful of present and absent for a student, just to make sure we make, that's going to count on our attendance and our funding. And I just think we need to, be on top of that. That's all. So thank you.
Good. Yep, makes a ton of sense. Any other questions then on the mitigation plan or discussion on the motion? Okay, Gregory, do you mind? Can you read us back the motion?
Yep. The motion was you moved for approval of the mitigation plan provided to the board on August 12th, 2020 by the executive director, subject to the edits we discussed in the meeting. And April seconded that motion.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? No? Okay. All in favor? All right, unanimous. Thank you. And then the last one is the on-site support plan, which I think I keep calling it the wrong thing. It's the on-site support services plan. All right, for this one, so following the same general approach, I'll move to approve the on-site support services plan provided to the board by the executive director on August 12, 2020.
I'll second that one, Matt.
All right. Everybody's getting in on the seconding act here. All right. Any discussion? No? Okay. All in favor? Aye. All right. That one's also unanimous. All right. Good. Christy, anything else that you need in terms of board approval of plans, approaches, guidelines, things of that sort?
I do not, but I would appreciate some clarification on the face mask policy. Because it is not required to be approved, is it the board's position that although they have noticed and they've seen it, that it's not something that they're going to require to be approved before I submit it?
That was going to be my approach, yes. Board members, any contrary opinions? No? Okay. All right, so Christy, looks like you have green light to proceed with the mask policy.
Thank you.
All right, last item under this topic is perhaps just a brief discussion of the state's recent guidance. So I think we are all well aware that on Thursday, August 6th, so just last week, the Department of Health Services and ADE issued a joint document called Safely Returning to In-Person Instruction. And it outlines guidance and recommendations for schools to consider when deciding when and how to open for in-person instruction. So it does have guidance, it does have recommendations, but it does not answer the key questions. So the questions and the decisions will still be up to the decision makers for each LEA. And for us, that means this board. So we do have already on our agenda for our next meeting on the 26th. Our plan is to discuss it there. So I don't mean to preview that or short circuit that discussion, but at least wanted to have it on the agenda here. And if anyone had any particular questions or concerns before we meet and discuss it on the 26th, to please go ahead and raise that now. Well, we should all pat ourselves on the back because I think the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago was very much in line with the guidance and recommendations that came out. And hopefully we'll have updated data from the state by our meeting on the 26th. All right, then. Last item on our agenda tonight is a quick update on the executive director search process. Yes, this work continues. There has been a lot going on, obviously. And it has been, I think, tough to stay focused on this particular item. But of course we will. So for review tonight is a slightly revised timeline for the search process. Not any changes to the process itself, just to push back the timeline, in essence, by a month. Given we had hoped to kick off some of the communications for the advisory panel about 2 weeks ago, and really, with everything going on, and there were just other priorities. There were other communications with faculty and with parents that needed to happen. And so I felt as though we could push this timeline back just a little bit and not jeopardize the overall timeline. And so, so again, basically pushing back the timeline on things by 1 month so that we would start getting communications out to faculty members, inviting them to participate on the advisory panel by September 1st, and likewise getting communications out to parents to solicit their interest in serving on this advisory panel also by September 1st. And to go from there. So you have the document. I circulated it by email. Any questions or concerns with pushing things back by a month as outlined in that?
Matt, can I just ask one clarifying question? This effort, it's procedural, correct? We're just trying to establish a procedure for this and a search for an executive director. I want to be clear because it keeps popping up on agendas and it continues to be a discussion. And I hope the community doesn't misunderstand that this is just so that there's a way of doing it. It's not necessarily indicative of satisfaction or dissatisfaction unrelated, to the current executive director. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I think that's right. What we're talking about right now, yes, is pushing back the process. So in that sense, procedural. The whole effort, though, is more than that. And I know you're not suggesting otherwise, but that's true. It's not we're not making a judgment per se. This is more just the calendar has not been kind to us, and there have been other priorities. And I didn't want to distract people, primarily our faculty, with this right now. Okay. All right. Well, not hearing any questions or concerns other than what Nathaniel mentioned. Thank you, Nathaniel. Anything else that we intended to cover tonight but have not? Gang, did I miss anything?
I missed the beginning of the COVID-19 discussion, and I just want to give kudos and even for putting together this massive amount of documentation and policies. I told someone today, I feel like my eyes are bleeding from all the reading I've done, and I just had to read it. So I just can't imagine how much time and energy and effort was taken. So thank you, and everyone, please take a big nap. And we're grateful, and everything looks fantastic and organized. So thank you.
We did cover that. Thank you. But that's okay. Always nice to repeat it. No harm there. All right, good. Anything else that we didn't cover? No? All good? Okay. Then I will move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, Gregory, thank you. Any discussion? No. All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, unanimous, thank you. All right, I'll read our closing verse and then we are finished for tonight. The most important tasks for humankind today and in the future is that we should learn to live together and understand one another. If this human fellowship is not achieved, all talk of development is empty. And that is from Rudolf Steiner. All right, board, as always, thank you so much for your time, effort, and engagement. Christy as well, thanks. I know we've said it several times today, but we're very grateful to you and to the others at the school who are making this all happen. And good luck for the grand reopening on Monday. And let us know if you need anything. But otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing everybody in 2 weeks at our meeting on the 26th. All right, have a nice night. Good night.